All right, so this is episode 6. We're going to talk about the Canadian Mafia, crime, families, etc. with Ceerious and Pete.
Yep.
So, you want to start off with the Rizzuto crime family from Montreal?
Yeah. So what I will start off with is it's kind of like a complex topic that a lot of like mob historians kind of disagree on. We do know that there's like organized crime and there's Italian organized crime, but some of like the smaller details are a little bit um, disagreed upon. We do know that the two American families that were most and getting into it might be the most to this day still involved with Canada are the Bonanno family through Montreal and the Buffalo crime family through Ontario. Now, like you said before, the Bonannos were involved in Montreal. There is a group that is commonly referred to as the Risotto or Rizzuto crime family. Okay. They historically were a Bonanno crew, so they weren't their own crime family. They were known as like the Catroni crew, and it was like it was a it's they're called a decena, which pretty much means crew of the Bonanno family in Montreal. So Vic Catroni was like the captain, right, of the crew, but the media referred to him as like the boss of that organization. But he was actually just like answering back to New York.
Yeah.
Later on, that became the Risotto through Niccolo and Vito Risotto. They kind of took over from Catroni. Um, Same thing. They were both Bonanno members. Where it gets kind of murky is in the 90s or towards the end of the 90s. There was a Montreal Bonanno member named George Shasha, George from Canada. He had some beef with Joe Messino, right? And he was killed on the orders of them of Messino. And after that point is where the Risottos might have split off into their own family, and that's kind of where they're at now. Obviously, Vito Rizzuto, he went to jail for a bit, and then he went back to Canada, and he died of cancer. His son, Leo, is supposedly the boss of what's left, but it's very murky. Like we don't really know where the allegiance is, if they're their own thing or not. Um, the thing about Canada is they're very like it's just constant murders up there. Like, there's different factions, they're killing each other with the risottos too. For a long time there was like different groups within the risottos who were killing other groups of risotto guys. So it's kind of murky like what the exact hierarchy is.
Yeah, from what I heard was there was like a power vacuum after Vito's imprisonment and his death. So, from what I
Yeah.
heard, Leo is the current boss or whatever.
Yeah, so Vito went to jail later on for the his involvement in the three capos hit. He went to New York and he was involved with that, for the Bananos. So later on, after Messino flipped and all that bullshit happened, Vito went to prison. And while he was in prison, his father Niccolo Risotto was killed, and there was kind of like people going missing. And when Vito went back, he didn't last much longer. Like he was dying of cancer, and he died. And there was just this big thing where like there was different factions. There was a Bonanno guy, Sal the Ironworker Montana. He was a New York Bonanno member, but he was Canadian, and he got kicked out of the country and he went back to Montreal, I guess, to like plant the flag. And he was killed by like, I guess, a rogue faction of the risottos up there. And this was around like the 2000s.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So the current status is a little bit weird. We don't know if they're still connected to the Bananos at all, at least in Montreal. And it's just kind of a shit show. Like if you look at Canada in the news, like over the last like 7 years, it's just constant murders, constant kind of like fire bombings of businesses. So what I personally think is there is still like a risotto kind of group, but there's like different factions in the family, and they don't all kind of connect to each other for the Montreal Mafia at least.
What about the guy Stefano Salicito? Is he with the?
Yeah. So there, you hear a lot of the Salicito faction. Like when you do basic research, that name keeps popping up. So I guess he is with Leo Risotto, but I don't know. Like again, like even Leo Risotto, like his car was shot at like I think last year, the year before. They don't know if that was like, I guess they think it might have been the Hells Angels, but they don't really know. It might have also been like Italian OC related.
Yeah, they never found out.
Yeah, but so that's my thing about the risottos is historically it was a Bonanno crew that most likely went rogue after in the towards like the 90s to now.
Yeah.
Um there is another thing with the Bonannos, I'll mention later, but that's Ontario related. I'm gonna slide into Ontario now.
Okay.
Um yeah, Ontario is I think it's a lot, there's still violence up there, but it's a lot more clear who's what's exactly is going on. Historically it's always been like Buffalo crime family territory, the Todaros. And locally, like in Ontario, you have a lot of Ndrangheta kind of affiliated groups. Lupinos, Musitanos, Papalias. Um, we know that the Lupinos, they were kind of like Buffalo members, so they might have been like historically Ndrangheta guys, but they kind of answered to the Buffalo crime family. Um, and the Musitanos, it's a little more unclear. So the Musitanos, famously, there's Pat and Angelo Musitano. They were two Calabrian mafioso in Ontario and Hamilton, and they both were killed like throughout the 2000s. And we think it's because they weren't in line with Buffalo. They were kind of leaning towards the Sicilian risottos, and maybe trying to get with them.
Basically, the Indragetta, uh, you think they possibly killed this Angelo and Pat guy?
Yeah, so like that's I don't know, like I think we have one of the gunmen's names, but it's again like some people say it was on behalf of the Buffalo affiliated and Drangheta guys, and some people say it was kind of like just more local gangland. I tend to think it was like done by the Ndrangheta, but
Yeah.
Buffalo probably gave, because again, like we don't really know how like the Ndrangheta now are, specifically the Lupinos. Um I forget, the name doesn't come to me, but they're mostly just Buffalo crime family members now. So I don't know how like loyal they would be to like the Calabrian cell.
Yeah. So I was reading stuff about that. There's a lot of Calabrian mafia out there.
Yeah. So again, so like where I was before with the Musitano hit, they were both killed, and it's believed because they were kind of leaning towards the risottos in Montreal. They were trying to make relationships with them, and I guess the Buffalo affiliated and Drangheta groups didn't really like that.
And they were rivals with the Papalia family?
Yeah, once Johnny Papalia died, the Musitanos pretty much tried like getting bigger, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's again, like it's Musitano, Papalia, Lupino. The Lupinos are also known as Lupino Violis, because they were kind of tied together. Um, the underboss of Buffalo right now is this guy Dominic Violi. Um, his father was, you know, hooked up into all that, but his father was a Bonanno member, and his father was actually killed in the 70s up in Canada. Um, we still don't really know what that was over, but that, you know, even though his father was a Bonanno member, now Dominic, is a Buffalo member. There's something called the Camisos and the Sodernos. They're Ndrangheta, I guess, cells, but they're not really connected as far as I know at all to Buffalo. They're kind of like their own thing.
Oh, okay.
And I'll be honest, I know a lot less about those two groups, because they're not really tied to LCN.
Yeah, they're really mysterious out there right now, especially.
Yeah, so the biggest kind of I guess info about Buffalo in Canada that we have is this thing Project Otremens that happened in 2015. I don't know if you've heard about that before.
No.
Yeah, so it was an RCMP and FBI kind of coordination, and again, like it was like 2015ish, maybe a little bit before, where they had like undercovers on like both sides in the states and in Canada, trying to like prove kind of like you know, a connection between these groups. And again, you know, I guess the main thing is this Dominic Violi, who you know, his father was a Bonanno member in Canada, but you know, the Violis were kind of connected to the Lupinos, which historically was, you know, an Ndrangheta group. You have Dominic Violi being picked up on wiretap saying that he was made into the Buffalo crime family, you know, in America. And Joe Todaro, the alleged boss, supposedly asked the quote unquote commission. This is his words on the wiretap, if it was okay to make him the underboss of Buffalo because he was a Canadian.
Oh, shit. So the people born in Canada, basically, let's say they're made into the Buffalo family, there's no RICO because they're in Canada, right?
Yeah, there's no RICO. I mean, obviously, there's still law enforcement, you know, stuff against them, but yeah. So, like for example, Joe Todaro, or you know, the alleged Buffalo leadership, they would have no problem, you know, ordering violence in Canada, whereas they might, you know, in upstate New York.
Right.
So that's the thing. It's like, you know, the Canadian guys are mostly left alone to do their own thing, but they are members of the Buffalo family. And again, like this Dom guy, Dominic Violi, he was picked up on the wiretap, kind of just like going back and forth, and he's like, you know, Tadaro went and asked permission from like the commission, and he's like, oh, we went to Colombo, we went to Bonanno, we went to Gambino, and they all said it was okay for him to be made the underboss.
Wow.
And that like that's a whole other thing, because you know, a lot of people say like, oh, the commission isn't really a thing. It's like kind of a, you know, it's not around anymore, and it kind of proves that even though it's not like how it was back in the day where they all sit around a table, it still proves that these guys are in contact with each other.
Yeah, you have to be when you're organized.
Yeah, and the other part of Project Otremens is the other big kind of takeaway is there was this guy Damien Zumo who was a Bonanno member. He drove a car up into Hamilton, and he inducted a guy into the Bonanno crime family in Hamilton. So not
Oh,
Buffalo, the Bonannos. You know, even though Hamilton was historically Buffalo slash Ndrangheta, you know, they're inducting a Bonanno guy into that area.
no, that's crazy.
And the crazy thing is, there's a guy, I want to say Paul Simplice. He was there too, but guess what? But guess what's fucking weird? That guy wasn't a Bonanno member. He was a Gambino member, and he was with them. He made the trip up.
What the hell?
So why is a Gambino member going up with a bunch of Bonanno members to Canada?
That's the weirdest shit I heard.
So that's the other thing. Maybe the Gambinos might have a presence up there, but you know, like maybe they were overseeing something. But so again, you understand what I'm telling you. Like this is some confusing shit, right?
Yeah, very confusing.
and not just Montreal is confusing, but it also like Ontario too. So
Yeah, and then you got Toronto.
and even like weirder is this is a little bit take this with a grain of salt. This is still kind of unconfirmed. There's reports that there's this guy Albert. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Lavarone, I guess. He was a Musitano guy. Like he was around the Musitanos. Um, there's an FBI report that like states that he was inducted into the Los Angeles or a Los Angeles crime family. Um, which is crazy in of itself because LA has been defunct for a while. So the question is because I think the file states like, oh, the Gambino family or an LA family in Los Angeles. So some people say like, oh, he was inducted into the Gambino family in Los Angeles.
Now that's really confusing.
Yeah, but he was a Canadian guy. But the thing is also like the alleged boss of whatever's left of LA is also named Tommy Gambino. So it's kind of like, are they talking about the Gambino family is like under Tommy Gambino in LA, or are they like a Gambino, the Gambino family in LA? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
And that
Shit.
guy, that Albert Lavarone, he ended up getting shot to death in Canada, like either a year or a few months after that.
Wow. What year was this?
I want to say like 2018ish. I'll have to like look it up again, but it's kind of a big mystery. And some people like I think if you look on the Los Angeles Mafia like Wikipedia page, which take that with a grain of salt, but it says that some people are saying the reason he was killed is because how I said like the Musitanos were killed because they might have been like going against Buffalo.
Yeah.
It's claiming that the same thing that apparently like that guy was inducted, but because he was in Buffalo territory, it wasn't like okayed by the Buffalo family. So it's very like convoluted.
Yeah.
So yeah, even just talking about like I told you about like Canada, like when you talk about Canada, it's very like the only things we know are historically it's been Bonanno and Buffalo with their kind of hands on the pie, and then they've had little groups under them.
Yeah. It's not as easy as like, all right, New York, the ins and outs, but Canada, it's like it's very confusing.
Yeah, and then in like Vancouver, British Columbia, there was a guy Joe Gentile, and he was kind of like a mafioso. This is back like a long time ago in the 50s, and we don't know exactly who he answered to. Some people say he was a Bonanno member because he was related in some way to like I said before, the Violis. And Dominic Violi's father was a Bonanno member, and he was like, I guess he was like his brother-in-law. I don't even know. I'd have to look it up, but there's some weird connection there. So some people are saying this guy was a Bonanno member. But then there's a Los Angeles Mafia undercover guy, FBI file, something Piscopo. I don't remember his name, where he says that this Gentile was a Los Angeles member.
What the hell?
So LA keeps popping up too. So it's a little bit like weird.
Who's in LA right now besides all these guys?
Well, like I said, LA is pretty much mostly defunct. We know there's still guys who are alive. Tommy Gambino, uh, he's the supposed boss. He's related to some of the Cherry Hill Gambino guys in New York City, but he was inducted into LA. And yeah, it's pretty much like a defunct family, but you keep hearing this thing about like, oh, this, with that Lavarone guy being inducted. So it's a little bit weird. And the guy before I was mentioning, Gentili, that was back in the 50s. So LA would have still been around at that point.
Yeah, and just for the people listening, the Tommy Gambino is different from the Tommy Gambino back when John
Yeah.
Gotti.
Yeah, Tommy, it isn't Carlo Gambino's son. It's Rosario, I guess, Gambino, one of the Cherry Hill Sicilian Gambino family guys. Kid.
Yeah. So which group works with the Hells Angels the most?
Uh, I don't know if I would say. I guess technically the Risottos. But the thing is, they were also at war with them for like a little bit. Like after Vito died, the Hells Angels kind of started picking up a lot of these union and like construction territories, and that's kind of like what some of the violence was about.
Oh, okay.
But it's supposed. They might have made peace now. It's kind of like it's just another one of those things. But I'm glad you brought up the Hells Angels. Like outside of Italian organized crime, I would say the Hells Angels and bikers in general are the predominant group in Canada right now.
Yeah.
A lot of the violence you see are is due to them allegedly.
Yeah, I heard there's a lot of biker gangs out there.
Yeah, but like a lot of people when they think biker gangs, they think of like dumb like hillbilly types, just not like really powerful, just kind of thuggish. But that's not true, man. Up here, like they're super like organized. Like again, like they're involved in construction. They're like one of the biggest groups in the country.
Yeah, they're nothing to be played with, man.
Yeah, and they're like again like they have a hierarchy. Like obviously they don't have made guys, but they have like guys who are like known as full patched members, which means you're officially And there's all these rules that come along with that too. So it's not just like I'm sure there are biker gangs, some of them that don't really have any rules and they just kind of run around and cause chaos, but that's not really true for the Hells Angels.
Yeah, they really know what they're doing. They've been around a long time.
Yeah. Well, even in Montreal, like there was a they weren't Montreal Hells Angels were some of the first uh like I guess group to pop up for the Hells Angels in Canada.
There's no cartels over there, are there?
I'm sure you do have some like street gangs that get drug supply from cartels, but and I'm sure there are cartel members who are active, but it doesn't seem to be like big time known players here.
Yeah.
At least maybe not in like Ontario and Quebec, you know.
What other biker gangs are out there?
Well, I guess there's a lot of like puppet clubs of the Hells Angels. I I don't know if I guess the big other like clubs are like the Outlaws MC, stuff like guys like that, but it's mainly the Hells Angels.
Yeah.
In the States, you have the Banditos, you have Outlaws MC, you have Nomads, like it's a whole bigger thing in the States.
Yeah.
Pagans MC is pretty big in the States too. But in Canada, like I don't know anything widespread about those groups. Maybe Outlaws MC, but I'm not too. I think it's mainly just the Hells Angels, and then there's like little small groups that like no one's heard of.
Uh,
You also have like a lot of like Sicilian clan stuff up here that like I guess historically they were connected to the Bonannos, but again, like once Risotto went, remember I said like the risottos kind of became like factionalized.
yeah.
You probably still have some of these like Sicilian clans that are loyal to groups back in Italy kind of involved with stuff.
Yeah, it's mostly Sicilian.
Yeah, like in Montreal, like again, like in Ontario, it's like Calabrian and stuff. But
Yeah. Sicilian is the Montreal. All right, that was the Canadian mob stuff with me and Pete. It's kind of complicated. We'll learn more stuff about it. And we'll report back when we find more.
yep, we'll have to wait till more stuff comes out. But yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right, bro.